Big 2 and the little 12 in the SEC is what it looked like in Week 5 with Alabama and Georgia bludgeoning Arkansas and Ole Miss. Welcome to the Voice of College Football SEC as we break down the conference that is the best in college football, 1 through 14 or 14 all the way up to number 1. Please give us your comments down below and your power rankings and compare them to ours. Let's check it out, starting with number 14. This is the easiest of the bunch to select. Vanderbilt continues to be awful despite a win. They won a game, but it was still atrocious. They needed a last-second field goal to beat UConn. UConn can't beat anyone. Purdue and Fresno State both shut out UConn by a combined 94-0. Vanderbilt needed a last-second field goal to beat UConn in the rain 30-28 at home. Now Vandy goes to the road, to the swamp, to take on Florida, and it's back to SEC play. The Commodores are 2-3, and again, they only have so many FCS and Group of 5 opponents to beat up on or slip by in the non-conference to mount some wins. So it's better than 0-10 last season. Clark Lee's first season in 2021 at Vandy is off to a 2-3 start. Fortunately, just barely over the mighty UConn Huskies. At number 13, maybe a bit surprising at this point in the season, a team that many had pegged as a dark horse in the SEC Eastern Division, but playing deplorable on defense, especially the Mizzou Tigers. Now at 2-3, there has to be some questions about Eli Drinkwitz and his program building there in Columbia, despite 5-5 last season. And again, only 5 games played, but very alarming following a 62-24 demolition to the Tennessee Volunteers, a game in which Tennessee running back, when talking about the Missouri defense during the week, said, "We're going to have a lot of fun this Saturday." So they saw it on tape and it played out on the field. 458 yards rushing by Tennessee against this Mizzou defense that is last in the nation, number 130 in rush defense. Mizzou tries to get healthy against North Texas, but there's only so many, like Vandy, only so many FCS and weak Group of 5 teams to beat up on before it's back to reality in the SEC. Mizzou's at 2-3, and they're number 13 in our SEC power rankings. At number 12, South Carolina. And speaking of getting strong and feasting on the FCS in the Group of 5, South Carolina did it again this past weekend over Troy to boost their record to 3-2 in Shane Beamer's first season. Good to get some wins under their belt in a young head coach's first year on the job. But outside the SEC, it's going to be difficult. They did play Kentucky close, to their credit, a couple weeks ago at 16-10 at home. South Carolina goes to Tennessee. We'll see what the Gamecocks have for the Vols this Saturday. Speaking of which, Tennessee football. Typically, a team would not feel good in Tennessee's with their history and tradition and brand and name and everything else at number 11 in the power rankings, but it feels awfully good after a beatdown of Mizzou, 62-24, as we mentioned. The run game was exceptional, and the rush defense was exceptional as well for Tennessee, holding Tyler Beatty to 21 carries and 41 yards. Tennessee all over Mizzou as Hendon Hooker hit on 15 of 19 passes. It's on to South Carolina for the Vols at 3-2. On to the top 10, and a team that did not expect to be anywhere close to this position to start the season. A team that was pegged by many to be the chief competitor to Alabama in the SEC Western Division, Texas A&M. They've already lost 2 games. They have yet to play Alabama, Ole Miss, LSU. They lose to Mississippi State following a loss to Arkansas. Beat up on both sides of the ball. Will Rogers abused them in regards to the defense trying to hold a fourth quarter lead. The offense has been much below average. Of course, we know about Haynes King leaving the game against Colorado weeks ago. Zach Calzada has not been comfortable at quarterback. The offensive line has underachieved. It's been just probably the most disappointing season in the conference, if not the nation, for Texas A&M. Again, losing to Arkansas, now to Mississippi State. And now they've got to face the Alabama Crimson Tide, a game that we all had marked on our calendars. We circled it during the offseason. Well, forget it. It shouldn't be much of a game at Kyle Field. Texas A&M taking on Alabama, the Aggies, at number 10 in our power rankings. At number 9, we got the team that just knocked off the Aggies, and of course that's Mississippi State. They're off this week before having to face the mighty Crimson Tide of Alabama. What a strange roller coaster season for Mike Leach's team in his second season in Starkville. They lost that bizarre game a couple weeks ago at Memphis on the phantom punt return that the officials indicated was a dead ball, but let the punt returner run back for a touchdown with 5 minutes left. Then they come back and beat Texas A&M. They lost to LSU, got down early, fought all the way back, could not get it done 28-25 at home. So this is a team that week to week they've played down to the wire against everyone. They can play all the way up against LSU and Texas A&M, down to Louisiana Tech. They've got an out-of-conference win that's pretty impressive against an NC State team that is currently in the top 25 at 4-1. Mississippi State's our number 9 team, behind the exceptional play of Will Rogers at quarterback, who is shouldering a load of 65 to 70 pass attempts per game for Mike Leach and company. MSU's at number 9. Checking in at number 8's a team that's been bouncing up and down as well. That started off at the Rose Bowl with an upset loss to UCLA. Most recently, a well-played half to 3 quarters against Auburn, but they fall at home in Death Valley to the Auburn Tigers, losing that one late. LSU now 3-2, and like Texas A&M, still looking to the most difficult portion of the schedule. And they've got a trip to Kentucky to take on the undefeated Wildcats this week. LSU at 3-2. Ed Ogeron starting to feel the heat in Baton Rouge. At number 7, we've got the Florida Gators at 3-2. They were impressive in losing to Alabama. Most people gave them even more credit for losing than most teams do for winning. The botched extra point obviously led to a situation with a 2-point conversion in which they failed and lost to the Tide 31-29. Then came the letdown at Kentucky. The Wildcats are a good team, but still, Florida dominated this game and blew opportunity after opportunity. On the stat sheet, they were the better team, but on the scoreboard, they were not. A blocked field goal, of course, in the second half led to their demise. They lost at Kentucky for the first time in forever. The Gators are 3-2. They try to get healthy this week with Vandy coming to town. At number 6, we've got an up-and-down team that's got a lot of critics out there as well, and it appeared as though Brian Harsin was going to have much to answer after 2 to 3 quarters in Death Valley. But Auburn comes back with a miraculous win. Bo Nix plays his tail off in the second half, and Auburn beats LSU to march on to 4-1. So on the plus side, even though they lost at Penn State, that's a top 5 team in the nation as it stands right now, and Auburn took them right down to the wire and played pretty much even with Penn State. On the plus side, of course, is this game against LSU as well. On the negative side, the Georgia State game probably should have been a loss. The officials bailed them out, and Auburn escaped an embarrassing loss against Georgia State. Upcoming, what could be embarrassing period, because it's been that way for every Georgia opponent through 5 weeks. Auburn, Georgia on the Plains. We shall see. Auburn comes in at 4-1 and our 6th-ranked team in the SEC. Our number 4 and 5 teams, interestingly enough, were both bombed by the heavyweights in the conference, Georgia and Alabama, and now they meet up. So Arkansas and Ole Miss 1 week ago were undefeated and looking to knock off the big boys. Well, they were not up to the challenge. I've got Ole Miss at number 5. They're 3-1. They, of course, lost that game to Alabama by a larger than what the score might indicate on the scoreboard. 28-0 at half. Lane Kiffin's offense produced only 291 yards, a low total during his 14-game tenure at Ole Miss. Matt Corral, though, still no interceptions against 10 touchdown passes through 4 games for the Rebels as they take on Arkansas this week. Got the Hogs at number 4, 4-1, 2 quality wins, of course, against Texas and Texas A&M, although that Aggie win taking a beating to a certain extent, but still dominant against a very talented Texas A&M team. Arkansas not ready, not up to the challenge against Georgia. This was not just a separation of talent. Arkansas was not prepared for this game. Did not take to the big stage. Maybe they'll be ready for the next challenge on a big stage. at Oxford on Saturday night is a good way to prepare. The Hogs are 4-1. They are number 4 in my power rankings. At number 3, got to go to the unbeatens, and Kentucky, of course, not impressive in their first 4 games, but then they come through against the Florida Gators, winning at home, and of course notching that huge SEC Eastern Division win. They're now 2-0 in the conference. Kentucky, with the likes of Wandale Robinson on offense, able to get it done against the Gators. Huge matchup against LSU, and we'll see if Kentucky can avoid the letdown. Now that they've notched the huge win, can they back it up against another talented team in LSU? Kentucky's at number 3. Okay, Georgia, Alabama. Up until this past week, I had Alabama as my number 1 team in the country, Georgia number 2. I have flip-flopped them based on resume. Georgia's resume is unbelievable. Let's first look at Alabama, though. At 5-0, they just annihilated Ole Miss. Of course, they got the 4th down stops on defense. They got the 4th down conversions on offense. And they just showed Ole Miss that they weren't ready for prime time in the SEC. They go to Texas A&M. That should be another big win for the Tide. Compare that to Georgia, though, and the Dogs are downright devastating on defense, outscoring opponents 205-37. This 37 points basically inconsequential. They basically shut out Clemson, shut out UAB until it was not a game, 56-7. South Carolina basically scored the most legitimate points against Georgia, and of course we saw what they did to Arkansas. This is the number 1 rated defense in the country based on yards against, based on points against, and based on yards per play, which is minuscule. They're giving up less than 5 points per game and just about 3 yards per play. It's ridiculous. Next up, the Auburn Tigers in the South's oldest rivalry. All right, let's check them off here, and you give me your list down below in the comment section. Georgia's number 1, Alabama 2, Kentucky 3, Arkansas 4, Ole Miss 5, the Auburn Tigers at 6, Florida 7, LSU at 8. At number 9 is Mississippi State. 10 is Texas A&M. At 11, Tennessee. Number 12 is South Carolina. Mizzou at 13. And the Vandy Commodores, of course, bring up the rear of the conference. Your comments, again, down below. Please like, share the videos out on social media, and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. We will see you soon.